places, everyone. Everyone needs a place. Gotta learn to beat the system.
You know this world has gone insane. It is absolutely no secret. But tonight, Saturday night, you are about to experience the true measures of what that insanity can bring you. Tonight, you are about to see Ball and Bonkers, the one-of-a-kind show that delves deep into the world with no holds barred. Now, meet your hosts, Dakota Franson, specialist of the strange, and Christopher Mule, the UFO fanatic. Now, give it up, and let's see what these two idiots can bring you.
Welcome, guys, to another Saturday night. Yay!
Yes, we have made it to Saturday. We have been looking forward to this episode. Viewer discretion is advised.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, we are joined tonight by a very special guest, none other than Mike the Naked Bigfoot. There, I had to give you the kind of grand opening there because you're just an awesome guy, and the knowledge that you have is amazing. So who's all in the chat tonight? There's Drew in already, so we'll let it fill up for a couple of minutes and then we'll start talking about anything you really want to talk about, Mike, you know. So Dakota's all quiet there, he's like...
No, I'm just waiting in suspense. I feel like it should be busting out K-tubes and all that.
If you want, I can give a quick summary of who they're dealing with tonight.
Yes, please, could you do that for us? Thank you, Brian.
For the people that are joining tonight for the first time or are going to be watching later, which I hope you're watching it live because it's a lot more fun live. But it's even more fun later too. I am Mike Coleman, also known aka Mike the Naked Bigfoot. Some just called the Naked Bigfoot or the Naked Mike. My life has I was born and raised in the Appalachian Mountains that run between West Virginia, and Tennessee. When I left the mountains, I went on a spiritual discovery to discover myself. As I traveled, I discovered many strange and unusual things, both in the paranormal, supernatural, and in the cryptid worlds. Aside from all the things that I learned on the mountainside with my mountain witch family, my great grandmother and my grandmother. But as my life progressed and I started learning more and seeing more strange things and knowing that the world was a lot stranger and scarier than I thought it was once I started traveling. I found my religion found me, and I found my religion. I became long story short, I became one of the few white voodoo priests here in the United States, also known as a Hongan. I am a practicing voodoo priest. I do have what you would call, I call them the faithful, but we do have parishioners, which if it makes better sense to everybody. And we do practice every week. We do hold mass, our version of mass every week. And I hold small ceremonies on a daily basis and at all the high holidays as well.
Do you know, I never knew that, Mike, that you actually did that every week. You're learning something new every day. You're learning something every day. I mean, the knowledge you have, Mike, is absolutely amazing. The guys, please go and check out his channel, Mike the Naked Bigfoot. You need to, because he does lives every now and again, and the lives are awesome.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
He's got one coming up, actually, which I think it will be a really, really good night. But, Mike, can you tell us about some of the creatures you have discovered in your path throughout the spiritual domain?
Oh my gosh. I can start when I was a kid in the mountains. And I'll tell everybody too why I'm called the Naked Bigfoot too, as I tell you everybody about this. But living in the mountains, there are many things that exist and live in the mountains that don't exist in anywhere else in the natural or unnatural worlds. That my family and my grandmother, my great grandmother especially, would always warn the kids against going into the woods at night. We had our version of the hide behind, which is it's a predatory cryptid.
Yeah.
We also had our version of trying to think of what my grandmother called that thing. A doppy. It's a dio. She said doppy. You have to remember these names are names that are mountain names. They probably have a more professional taxonomy, but I always know them by what my family called them. And when, like, say, if you watch the one about the leshy, we had a version of the leshy known as the Rook, RUK, that I thought was a lot more dangerous than what the European leshy was. But if you want to watch that video, you can go to my site and watch that video.
Link in the
It was a
description.
lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed talking about that. We had hoop snakes, which if no one knows what a hoop snake is, some of these things I never encountered. Some of them I did encounter. We had our version of the wild man of the woods, the man who walked behind the rocks. Our version of the mountain man, which was Bigfoot at the time. That my family, of course, talked about, and I've had the misfortune of dealing with most of my life. Yeah. But once I left out of the mountains, there were a number of elemental spirits I encountered. In the spiritual sense, I encountered things of the swamps throughout Louisiana and Mississippi. In Mississippi, especially, there was a thing that is talked about in Thibodaux, Mississippi, called the Crow Man, and I actually saw the Crow Man, and that's going to be an upcoming show, hopefully soon, where I talk about the Crow Man of Thibodaux, Mississippi. Crow Man started off. They talk about it in very hushed tones, but Crow Man is probably one of the scariest things I ever encountered. I encountered a spiritual being known as the Skinner Man.
Oh, yeah.
That was a bloody bastard. I've seen everything and dealt with everything, God, far and wide. I was able to experience the Deer Woman for the first time. I kept hearing about Deer Woman for the longest time. Deer Woman is apparently incredibly dangerous, but the time that I was able to experience her, it wasn't horribly dangerous. God, dudes.
You've done so much.
I can pull this up all night long.
Well, we've got all night.
I know.
For 2 hours so you can share it out to all the other spots. So.
No, honestly, Mike, you have done so much. I mean, there was one of the tales that you did when you first started your YouTube channel, and it was a 3-parter, and it was about, was it look at this creature that was in a house? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Tale the Goblin House. That one is something else. Quick story. There are things that do exist that people talked about in legend and fairy tales that existed in most European countries and small villages. And when they migrated from their country and came here, they brought a lot of these things with them. And they brought a lot of these stories, these legends with them. And of course, if you believe in something strong, especially if something that existed in the spirit world, belief is 99% of its existence. So when you believe in it and you speak about it, it can gather that energy, that power of that belief, and manifest in our physical world and interact with us. These things, it's called a fetch, Fetch, that was infesting in this house. And fetches, before I get into what was actually going on in the house, a fetch is something that passes between the spirit world and the physical world, but it needs a reflective service, a body of water, a mirror, high-polished silver, high-polished, really highly reflective glass to act as a gate between it and our physical world. And fetches are things that they exist to scare people. They exist to cause fear in people. fetches were spoken of in a lot of Irish lore and mythology, as well as in Finnish and Slavic mythology as well. But they had different names. But like a fair, Feyr, they were also called fairs for fears. The fetch was, because that was their trade. They caused fear, but they would feed off of this fear. But they could not scare you as a spirit form. They were shapeshifters. They would have to assume the form of something that would scare you or cause and just not scare. I'm not talking about a jump scare where somebody jumps around the corner and goes boo and you shit your pants. These things, they attach themselves to families, and they're a generation. I call them generational predators. They, unless they're dealt with, every generation will inherit the same fetch, and they exist to inspire fear and feed off of that fear. Well, this fetch, this group of fetches, come to find out, it was more than one. I had a witch friend who explained to me that there's always more than one. Me being silly, didn't realize there was more than one at the time.
Yeah.
On occasion, there's a few paranormal groups of individuals, and and 2 or 3 actual spiritual mediums. I get called in for consultations if it's something that they feel is quote unquote ghost related, a once human situation. If it's something that's beyond that, that's going straight into the world of the supernatural or the supernatural. There's a difference between cryptids and supernatural cryptids. Cryptids are more part of our physical world versus a supernatural cryptid that exists in our world and the spiritual world at the exact same time. They walk between the worlds. So you'll hear me switch between those terms often and frequently. If anybody wants to interrupt me with a question, you can, because I can talk all fucking night. So.
Guys, if you have any questions at all, please just leave it in the chat and I'll put it up for you. But it's scary. What you think's actually creeping out there in the dark nights when you're in your house watching your TV and sitting in front of your fire. It's scary to think what is just round that corner watching you.
Well, that's what. Going back to the fetch, that, and there's also something called a Mari too, which I had the misfortune of dealing with too. And Maris don't inspire physical. It's called true fear. It's a fear that's so visceral that your bones literally shake and ache from the fear. That's what they need to feed off of. It creates enough energy for them to feed off of it. Just saying boo doesn't work. They want to scare the shit out of you and do it. They're good at it too.
Yeah, guys, you need to check out Mike's channel. Honestly, I'm plugging your channel here too. But Mike is also writing a book, and it will soon be out too, which I'm looking forward to because I'm going to buy a couple of copies because I'm just that type of guy.
Oh wow! I'll sign a copy for you.
That's what I want you to do. I want a signed copy. Hey Lex, Can you tell us a wee bit about your book that you've been writing?
Well, throughout my life, one of the things I was taught at an early age by my grandmother, as a matter of fact, she always told me my family, believe it or not, there's a lot of people that live in the mountains, and a lot of mountain people, a lot of mountain cultures that are literate. Regardless of what people may think, they're quite literate. Not illiterate, they're literate.
Yeah.
And incredibly intelligent and educated in their own right. And one of the things that my family imbued on me, my extended family imbued in me, was to document everything. See, I inherited my great-grandmother and my grandmother's, their journals. And then I started writing my own journals while I was in the mountains. And then when I left out of the mountains with my immediate family, I always kept journaling, and I literally have boxes upon boxes upon boxes of journals of my life experiences. Here on the East Coast and all the way across to California and beyond, my journals, and it documented all the strange and weird happenings that I experienced. All the different. I've attended many different types of faith setups, and I want to say it like that were outside the norms of Christianity. We're talking about things like snake handling, Santeria, things like that. They were outside the mainstream that exists here in the United States and throughout the Caribbean islands and Polynesia and parts of Mexico and South America.
Yeah.
And I would always write down my observations or what went on when I went there, so I would never forget it. I would never write while I was there. I would always go back to the hotel room or wherever I was staying, and I would sit down and write it up.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was we decided to pull together a large portion of these journals and pull out some of the meatiest and choicest bits and pieces and do them in a book format to explain my life, how I started in the mountains and found my way here to civilization. But I had a very long paranormal and supernatural, really fun, incredibly frightening, and most of the time incredibly dangerous experiences that I had. But I survived them all.
Yeah.
Sometimes through skill, sometimes through education, but most of the time through blind and stupid luck.
Yeah.
I survived most of the situations. Not all of the situations I encountered dealt with the supernatural, but with people as well. I was able to talk to 2 serial killers during my time.
Really?
No, I should say they weren't serial killers. They were mass killers. They were. I have to get that right. One of them was the Georgia werewolf, and then that poor guy, he got convicted of it. But I still believe to this day that he was neither a werewolf nor he killed these kids. I really don't believe that whatsoever. And the other one was this asshole was out in Colorado. He killed about 8 hikers out there.
Wow.
And he kept their index fingers. He would cut their index fingers off, and he kept them. And then when the meat rotted away, he would put them on a necklace that he did, and he wore them underneath his shirts all the time. His bones. He was an interesting character to talk. He was truly evil. There was something just not quite right about him.
Clearly.
Besides,
Yeah, I mean, what was he called? The index killer, out of curiosity.
I've got to go back and look up his name. He was an asshole. I had a name for him too, but I forget what it was. I always remember the werewolf of Georgia because at the time I was studying. I was looking for leads to the Rougarou legends of the Deep South, and it led me to finding the Georgia werewolf killer. So
Wow.
he was such a kid. He was a kid himself.
How did you get to meet these people? How did that come about?
You have to remember at the times that this happened, the rules with the Georgia werewolf killer. It was really, really easy because the family members, I got to meet some of the family and I did some videos of that meeting, and it led to the tales of the Skinner Man. It became more supernatural and much more terrifying than any werewolf you'd ever want to meet. That whole situation did. But it was a small, number one, it happened in a small town.
Right.
It was not a racially diverse town. I'll put that politely and as delicately as possible. It was not a racially diverse town. And when they found out that I was not one of the ass-sucking reporters and I was actually curious about what was going on, the police wanted to know what I learned too, as I was out talking with the community and working around. And in exchange, they would actually let me sit down because he could still have visitors come to his cell. And they let me put my name on his visitor list to go in and talk to him. And I'll tell you what, I left numerous times from talking with him, and I was in tears after leaving him because I knew that they were going to kill him, that he was going to go up the road, he was going to get railroaded. Well, not even railroaded. He was going to go down for those murders, and he did.
Yeah.
They put him in Old Sparky, and it was bad. It was bad. executed him in Athens, Georgia. That was at the time one of the multiple locations you could go to get executed in. So
That is just, I don't know what to say there. I mean, that's just crazy. I'm going to let my co-host Dakota ask you some questions because I've been talking all night.
It just seems like whenever we get together, there's some sparks up.
Yeah.
Anyway, earlier you happened to mention where there's a lot of things that require belief in it and having to speak about it in order for it to basically be able to materialize into this world. Have you ever come across a situation where essentially a fictional character came to life through those means?
the closest thing I can think of with that is when I was looking up the and visiting the, which you probably, everybody's going to hear of these. Mostly from urban legends that find life of their own because people believe in them. For example, the Goat Man on Goatman Bridge, the Bunny Man, which is one of my absolute favorite things to talk about. It's the Bunny Man, because I actually we have our own Bunny Man here in Virginia. That I swear I heard him whistling in the woods when we were out trying to find where he was. That these things, the Bunny Man existed because we had spent we had literally collected 45 stories in one afternoon about the Bunny Man from different people, and everybody believed in the Bunny Man. They all had a different story, but it all was about the same character. And so when we went out to investigate the Bunny Man, who, by the way, was an axe murderer who would kill people with his axe, and there's a Bunny Man usually in every state out here in the Union. But it is the power of belief, and the Tibetans have the Tibetan thought form, which is the tulpa, that if enough people believe in something strong enough, it'll gain life from it and gain a life of its own, and be able to exist as long as there's belief in it. It's called the Candyman syndrome.
Yeah.
Remember the original Candyman movie, not that god-awful remake, when the Candyman said, and I love Clive Barker, he's an amazing writer. But one of the lines that Tony Todd delivered, which is stuck with me because I've never heard something more true and more accurate in my life being told in a horror movie. He told, I can't think of her name when I want to talk, Helen. He looked at Helen and he says, "You doubted me, so I felt obliged to come."
Yeah.
She chose not to believe any of the stories about him. She didn't have any core belief in him, so he came to her to prove that he existed. And he gained power from that, from her belief in him. And he gained power over her because of her belief in him, which eventually led to her death.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. On you go, sorry?
No, I was just asking because I have a very similar situation. Thankfully, so far, it's something that seems to come out whenever there's a warning about a dangerous entity that's got its eyes on me, but I was just curious on your thoughts about situations like that.
Well, the only way to make something like that go away is to literally, and it's almost impossible. You can remove your belief in it as much as you can, but there's always going to be some primitive, primal part of your brain, that animal part, that primitive, that reptilian part of your brain, that's always going to have fear of whatever that story was. It's still going to have that primal bit of fear. And then that's all they need, is that primal bit of fear to be able to, it's a little tiny flame, which they'll fan and make it larger. So you'll never get rid of them that way.
And I suppose
You
the more
can weaken them, but you'll never get rid of them.
Yeah. I suppose the more people that have heard about this entity, even if Dakota stopped believing in them, there's other people now that believe in this entity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the Candyman effect. He only existed because people told stories about him. It's the same thing in the supernatural and paranormal worlds. There are these formless entities that exist in the spirit world who can't gain form until you believe in them. And you may not believe in them in particular. You may believe You may believe in a six-eyed hamster that breathes fire that'll kill you in your sleep. Well, you're giving it. You're opening a small window up for this formless spiritual entity to assume the form of a six-eyed hamster that breathes fire that's going to kill you in your sleep, because you believe in something like that strong enough that this thing's going to come and go, hey, I can interact with the real world now. Let me become the six-eyed hamster. He believes in it. He's given it enough energy for me to assume the form of it. And thus he becomes, the six-eyed hamster that people will talk about for generations.
It's just terrifying. Because you think about all the people out there that dream up. You think about, right, let's take for instance, the comic world, right? People will take a comic, right? And if they believe, like, say, Man of Steel, Superman really exists, right? In theory, if you believe that, eventually something could come out of that.
Well, you know what, Chris? You have to remember, too, there are two levels of belief. There's a surface level of belief. Like, everybody wants to believe in superheroes. They want to believe in heroes. They want to believe in the X-Men and mutants and special abilities. But that surface belief alone is not gonna be enough to cause anything.
Yeah.
And then you've got a belief that vibrates on its own vibrational level spiritually, that's deep within us. And when we tap that spiritual belief within us on that vibration, on that spiritual belief, that's something else. That's something very primal, very primitive. That's the essence of. Think of the Australian Aborigines, where they say that everything came from the dream time, and the dream time is still all around us. And things are still being made every day from the dream time because they want it. They believe in it enough. Something will step out of the dream time and assume that belief.
Yeah,
that's what that is. That's what that is.
It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it, Dakota? It's just, oh my God, where do you store all this knowledge, mate?
What do you think causes hair loss?
Well, one of the things that, as a Hungan, as a voodoo priest, that we do is that we make a pact with the Loa and the upper Loa and the deified Loa, which are the spiritual ancestors, and if you want to call them the gods, they are the gods, but we don't consider them gods. We consider them the spiritual upper ancestors and the greater ancestors. Is that when you make a deal with them that they share your life and your physical reality, they in return will give you. You make a deal with them, and they'll return give you continue whatever you ask for, whatever they agree to. And what I asked for was knowledge. And so I may not know the answer to something right away, but the Loa provide enough intuition to me to be able to help me find the answers very quickly and to find the information very, very quickly. So it's a deal. It's a deal I struck many, many years ago.
Yeah. Can you tell for some of the people that's obviously you've told me before, but can you tell for some of the people that's listening to this tonight, the podcast side, what the Loa is? What are they? Where are they from?
The Loa, think of them as a part of I always tell people, the spiritual gemstone of the universe. The gemstone is this massive spiritual energy, and every facet is a facet of that spiritual energy that assumes a form known as a Loa. And a Loa's come in and they exist on different levels. They exist in families, the Loa do. You have the immediate ones, which are your ancestors, which were the once living, and then a step above them are the Loa that are the messengers and the family members to the greater Loa, because they belong to a great family. And they exist on the back of a great serpent, and the serpent is white, and it exists in the sun on a beach. And when the sun shines upon the serpent, it casts both a shadow and a rainbow. The Loa that are aspects of something that are good, not necessarily good, but positive, and wish to do positive things in the universe. They walk in the light that's shown from the scales of the serpent. But the shadier, darker Loa and spirits out there, they walk in the the shadow of the serpent.
That's.
I
I'm
hope
just
that answers.
imagining. I'm imagining that in my head. This white
Yeah.
serpent. I mean, it's
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 called
amazing,
Ojibwa.
isn't it? It's
Yeah, it's
amazing.
called Ojibwa. It's
Can you?
it's an odd concept. It's an odd concept, I know, but for a lot of
Yeah.
people that follow most mainstream religions, it's a hard concept to believe in. But trust me,
Yeah.
when you see the serpent for the first time and it speaks to you in the voice of the hummingbird for the first time, you can do nothing but believe in that. So
Yeah. Of course, this entity will be older than time itself. How old is
well,
it? It's infinite, isn't it?
well, they created well, you have the creators, and the serpent was the creator. Um, it vomited up it spilled out the oceans. Its skin it shed became the land and the forests and the mountains. Every time it shed its skin, it was the creator. And then they begat the children that were the original Loa that helped form the bodies of mankind for the first time and bred life into them and gave them their own spark of divinity.
I don't know. I just want to say that's beautiful. Just the way they put that. It's just, I don't know. I can see something. It's weird. It's weird. I'm experiencing something right now. I don't know what that is, but it just feels really real to me. I don't understand it. Maybe you can tell me after, Mike. But it's just, I'm going to let Dakota because I think he's got a question for you.
I'm just watching the chat right now. It looks like we have some people having reactions to tonight's live.
Yes. What's that?
I can't see them. If you want to share, I'll be happy to listen.
Bring it
Well,
up, Dakota.
Oh fuck! I can't see them,
No, there you
dude.
go.
I can't see them.
Well,
I'm fucking blind anyway. What's
Yeah,
that say?
Drew's-
I'll read. We have Drew's paranormal vlog. She's been having a lot of interesting activity lately. Guys, I need to go and ground myself. Something isn't right. I'm feeling really weird. I'll be back. And she just said that she's gonna disappear from us later.
My bad.
It's not your fault, man.
We had that same effect on her.
Yeah, we have that effect, for some weird reason, But here's an interesting question. I hear you mentioning this quite a lot. What's your big black book?
My big black book of bad things.
What's that?
I actually call it that. The big black book of bad things. The first half of, and it really is a book. It's a huge book, actually. And the first half of the book is it has all the notes and on mountain hoodoo and mountain magic and mountain spirits. The first half of that was from my family that they recorded and wrote down their observations and their different cures and stuff that they used to. And the second half of the book are the parts that I penned myself in it. That think of it as a grimoire. It's all the various rituals and rites I've learned from other cultures and other belief systems that will come in handy against various unfortunate situations that may arise for people.
Yeah.
Like sealing ceremonies and things like that. If you're trying to seal your house away from something, or seal an object, so if an object's being used as a channel for an entity, how to seal it to where the entity can't use it anymore, and how to identify certain entities for what they are, because you should, when you're dealing with entities, any type of supernatural or paranormal entity, the first thing you want to do is to learn what it is, to be able to name it, because when you name something, you take power from it and you assume a little bit of power over it. And that's the only way to effectively deal with it on its level, is to know what it is. Because a lot of the shittier things that do strange shit to people out there, they don't want you to know what they are, or they want to mislead you to believe that they're like the ghost of your great aunt Sarah, when actually they're actually some kind of parasite, and they're using the tale of the ghost of great aunt Sarah to fuck with paranormal investigators or to fuck with a family for both its entertainment and its nourishment. So,
yes. Can I ask you something, Mike? Have you ever pissed an entity off and it's followed you home?
It's mine.
Oh god, dude, yeah, many times. I've had shit follow me.
Can you tell us a wee bit?
Not just because they were mad at me. because they were curious about me.
Right.
Mm.
We have here in the United States, and it's mostly we have our version of something called a will-o-wisp, which is something that
Right.
exists mainly in European folklore and mythology, but we have versions of it here, like we have the Brown Mountain Lights, which are a type of American will-o-wisp.
Right.
We have here in the south and in the mountains, we have something called foxfire,
Right.
which exists in the woods as they're actual spiritual entities that are mostly harmless but very mischievous. Um,
Right.
and they're well known here in the mountains for luring hunters at night. People are hunting like raccoons and stuff at night. For luring hunters, out, and they usually will end up hurting themselves. They'll lead them out into the woods and usually off a cliff or into a river or into a swamp somewhere, because they're basically assholes. But I have gone out and I've studied the foxfire and the fox lights in the woods. And I've actually went out to study them, to look at them, and I was able to actually observe them happening. And they look deceptively harmless. If you can picture a green candle flame assuming like a face, or a green candle flame assuming the shape of a hand, and that's what they'll look like in the distance as they're trying to lure you away from what you're doing, or lure you away from your group of people that you're with.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't fall for it. One of the neat things about keeping them at bay and is using crushed mistletoe berries. And crushed mistletoe berries, and you take the juice and you put it around your eyes and around your nose and your mouth, because it helps you see them for what they are, and they can't fool you.
Right.
And I did that. And there was about 12 of them. They became highly agitated. And as we were driving home, after observing the little bastards, we would see behind us on the road those little green lights flickering. They were following us home. I'm pretty sure we pissed them off. And for the next until about the next full moon, it was about a little bit over a month leading into the next full moon, we would see them in our yard. And in the rose bushes and trees, we'd see these little green lights flickering around the trees out there because they had followed us home.
Yeah.
Eventually, they got either bored or lost energy and dissipated or went back home and left us alone. And then there's the fetch. And then I had a fetch follow me home, and that terrified me because the fetch went after my family. But we sealed that little bastard off too. So
yeah,
he's somewhere beating the walls.
I think Dakota's got a question there. I can sense it from him using the Jedi mind powers.
Your Jedi mind powers aren't that good. I'm still processing everything.
I know.
Yeah.
I said aren't that good.
I know. So right. I've got a question for you, Mike. What is the most scariest thing that you have experienced in your entire life doing this? What is the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to you? Ever?
Probably the most terrifying thing that's ever happened is something that's more recent. Now, I did visit a number of snake handling churches, and I was bitten twice by a rattlesnake there, but that's a whole different story. I wasn't as much terrified as I was, oh fuck, I'm gonna die. And I still got the marks on my arm. Was my dealing with the Bigfoot that live the tribe of Bigfoot that live in our mountains here on a farm up here in the mountains, because it's something that's been persistent and ongoing. They've been very aggressive.
Yeah, and that's
rock
because
rock
of the
roaring.
tree.
Yeah, rock roaring. I mistakenly started that fight with them, so that was my own ignorance that did that, but it hasn't ended. It's gotten better now that I've learned more about how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But we still have missing animals. We still have fences that are ripped down. We still have parts of the barns that are ripped apart. We find huge rocks all across the front of the yard and up the steps in places.
That's terrifying, knowing that
that's ongoing. When the sun goes down, we just don't fuck around outside. Nobody goes outside at all anymore at night when the sun goes down. So we just don't play that game.
Has anyone in your area just disappeared, never been found again?
I wish. I've actually heard Donald Jenkins is my closest neighbor, and he's a dairy farmer.
Right.
And he swore up and down that he saw me and my son in the woods one night, while running out of one of his dairy barns in the woods and running back into the forest and heading back towards our house, heading back towards the mountain. Oh, because he's on the other side of the mountains, heading back to the mountains and come back over to our side of the mountains. And he swore that he saw us, that it was us. He said it was
something,
but it was
lure them.
Well, it was probably those hairy bastards. They were in there doing something, and he assumed it was us because I don't have the best of relationships with him. But
have you ever tried to broker peace with the Bigfoot or whatever they are?
Yes.
What have you? Yeah.
Yeah,
How do
I have.
Broker peace with them. How do you broker peace with something like that?
I went on several spirit walks, leaving my body and try to enter the spirit world to talk to them. I've left many gifts. I've gone to the edge of the borders of the land, the border between my land and their land, which, by the way, it's all my land, but they happen to take ownership of the land across the creek.
Yeah.
I've gone there and spoken out into the woods, and I knew something was out there listening to me. You can feel it when the woods go quiet, and the mountains never go quiet, but the mountains go quiet. You can hear them, and they were out there listening. I've taken gifts from our orchard out to them, apples and peaches and fresh fruits off of all the stuff that we grow here on the farm. I'll go out there and I'll leave it for them on the stones that are across the creek. And the stuff literally disappears in a matter of hours. As soon as we turn our back and come back out of the woods, we'll go back and it's all gone, including the basket and the plates or whatever we sat on. It's all gone. And we never see the things that we put out there with them ever again. I've left them beeswax candles, honeycombs, all kinds of stuff, and never to be seen or heard of from again when it's out there.
It makes you wonder where they're actually staying. Do you think they've got? What do you actually think? Where do they stay? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, we do. Well, we have a cave system throughout.
Right.
This part of the Appalachia, there's a very extensive cave system. And some of the caves, from what I understand from talking to family, and from reading stories from my family, some of those caves will start on our side and can extend, and the caves will actually extend all the way over to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. They're long, extensive caverns that go that far there. They're underground creeks and rivers, and I'm assuming probably even lakes underneath those mountains as well. Because there's lots of stories of the moonshiners and of criminals too that would take shelter in these cave systems. They would talk about how far back they went, and sometimes they would tell the stories of the things that they found that lived there too.
Oh, it makes you wonder if that's how they get about. They use the tunnel systems to.
Oh, dude, it's a labyrinth of caves up there. I can spot one going across the creek with my binoculars easy on one of the cliff faces back there.
Yeah, one of them.
Fuck no, I've gotten really close to it. And that was many years ago, but I haven't been back ever since.
That's fascinating though, because it makes you wonder what could be in there. Yes, there could be something that's wanting to eat you.
Dude, I do not want to take a rock to the I don't want to take a rock to the head and end up being somebody's turkey at Thanksgiving in a cave somewhere. That's not gonna happen.
Oh damn! The
see, this is a question I've got. See, Bigfoot, is Bigfoot a vegetarian or do they eat animals? What are they?
They have the same. Well, they have the same taste as humans. They're omnivores, but they have a tendency to eat more meat than vegetables.
Okay, right. So I know if I'm ever in that area, then I outrun Dakota. I'll be fine.
We eat more protein than vegetables, and I'm just assuming they do too, considering what I've seen disappear on my property versus what the stories I've heard when I've traveled across the United States about what is taken off of people's land. The animals, when some of them have a fondness for eating people's dogs. Oh my they get a taste for a certain meat
That's-
It was Momo, the Missouri Monster, which was a
Yeah.
Bigfoot. It was Momo that had the taste for dogs and would
Oh
go
my
into
God.
people's yards and get their dogs. And people watched it and witnessed it as it happened and couldn't do anything about it. Because this particular Bigfoot had a taste for dogs, and there was always more. And they assumed there was more than one too, because it would so many of these occurrences would happen at the same time at different locations and in that part of Missouri. So it was more than one doing it. They had a taste for dogs.
Oh my God, I'm a dog owner. Just thinking about
Yeah.
that.
Oh, dude, there's so many things out there that are dogs
That's
Yeah.
awful.
that exist that will eat a
Bye,
dog.
Jesse.
Yeah, you don't want to take a little Pomeranian out in the woods and
Oh my
deep
God.
into the woods because
All
something's
it's
going to
found
hit
is the
that.
collar, you know.
Yeah, or if you're lucky to find that.
Here's a subject I'm going to bring up, and me and Dakota's right into this. I mean, UFOs. What's your opinion on UFOs, Mike? Have you ever witnessed any UFOs?
I've never seen one, although I think I saw something that came out of a UFO one time. But I was really, dude, I was really high, so I wasn't sure if I was. If, I'm being honest. I was in Kentucky when it happened. All kinds of weird shit happens in Kentucky. Trust me, as far as UFO activity. The people that were with me, they swore they saw something land out in one of the fields out there, and then I saw something in the tall grass out there, and it was nothing but a bunch of little, and I'm seeing it now. It was a bunch of little red eyes. They were about 3 feet tall out in the grass, and they were all looking at me. I still don't know to this day what the fuck that was, or if I had just or if I just mixed my LSD wrong, because it really.
They were probably flying their ship over and seen you rolling about the grassy field and thought, I wonder what he's on. I wonder if we get any left.
Dude. If I were to ever see, I want to see a UFO. I want to experience an alien. I mean, I have the William, and if there are any kids in the room, you're going to want to cover their ears right now. If I'm about to say, dude, I have the William Shatner belief. I mean, focus on aliens. I wish to explore brave new worlds and fuck them. I mean, you have to. I mean, I just am fascinated by alien sex practices. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Well, you never know.
I'm not saying this just to get a reaction. I really, really am fascinated about alien sex practices. I mean, I've seen all kinds of ritualistic sex practices in different cultures and religions here in the world. I'm just wondering how other aliens do it.
Well, if we ever come across aliens, Mike, we're going to give them your address and say, listen, you need to go and visit this guy. He's going to show you his big black book of bad things.
I'm going to show it my toy chest and ask if it has its own type of extraterrestrial toy chest. I want to see the shit they've got. I mean, how much information can you find out from probing someone's ass, too, for crying out loud? I'm just going to put that out there. Don't you think?
Well,
dude, after 100 years, I mean, there's only so much you can glean from someone's rectum. I'm just going to let that drop.
I will say this, right? I think that probing thing, I think that's a load of rubbish. I don't think that actually happens.
I think it is, too. I think it got started out because people started making fun of people that were having actual encounters. Yeah. And it started off as something to make fun of them with, which I don't think that's cool, but I still laugh about it.
Well, if there's any aliens listening to this transmission going through space and time as we speak right now, Mike the Naked Bigfoot wants to have a visit from you tonight sometime, or maybe through the week.
Dude,
if you can't make it on a Saturday night.
One of my rules and everything that I've experienced in my life has been I don't believe it until I experience it in some form. Either spiritually, physically, with all my senses or something. And until that alien walks up to me, and I shake his hand or he whips out a schlong for me, I'm not going to. I'm sorry. He's going to be the unicorn of my world until he shows up. So
that's very true. But here's a thought, right? A lot of people say this to me, that I'm on the fence about this. They say Bigfoot could be an interdimensional being, or
Now, see, I do believe that, and
Yeah.
I don't think extraterrestrial is the same as interdimensional, because you're not dealing with something terrestrial that's outside of our world. That we have dimensions all around us, parallel dimensions, spiritual dimensions, dimensions of time, dimensions of space. That some creatures, you know, how some fish naturally are born knowing how to breathe water. Well, I think there are things that exist, including Bigfoot, that it's natural for them to pass between worlds.
Maybe that's
Just
for
like
the
they would
time.
eat or breathe. It's natural for them.
Yeah. I
Because you
mean,
have to remember, people that have seen them, other stories of people have seen them, they're either accompanied or preceding a sight of a Bigfoot, or these flashing lights in the woods, these hovering lights, and then suddenly there's a Bigfoot. Or there's flashing lights and suddenly Bigfoot is gone. He walks behind a tree and he's gone. He doesn't ever step out behind the tree.
or it could be the case that the extraterrestrials that are visiting us, right, are curious about Bigfoot too. And when he disappears, he's getting abducted. You never know. See,
Well, cattle mutilations have been coming back in the last couple of years, so you never know.
Well, cattle mutilations have made a huge comeback. Remember the satanic panic of the 80s, so I can't wait till that starts up again.
I mean, the cattle mutilations, I mean, you would wonder how a lot of people say, oh, yeah, it's crows have come down and started pecking on them. Crows don't burn perfect. When they cut the flesh, it's sanitized, it burns the flesh. You know, yeah, I live in a farming community, right? And I have seen that. I've seen crows pecking sheep's eyes that have died out, or cows that have died out, right? Because they'll go for the softest part to get, right? But crows don't cut and remove certain organs.
No, they go for the path
blood.
of least resistance.
Yeah. I mean, it's. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to put a notice out there for our alien friends to come and visit Mike.
Like I said, until it actually,
equipment.
I'm going to be a doubter until it actually happens, because that's always been my philosophy. I've met many people who have claimed to be abducted or claim to have spotted not only a UFO, but they've seen different types of aliens, whether they're the angelic type aliens or the god awful reptilians. Oh, don't get me started about
reptilians, shapeshifters,
or the insectoids or something like that. I've heard those stories, and some of the stories I think they are mistaking something from the paranormal or cryptid world for an alien.
Yeah. But here's a question for you, Mike. Spirits. I take it you've seen spirits. Can you tell us about some of the spirits you've seen? Sightings.
Well, you're going to make me explain first when I talk about this. I always have to preface the conversation with there are all types of spirits. There are the once human spirits, which are people that have died and their energy still exists on this as an echo or as an intelligent echo that they leave behind. And then you have the inhuman, which are the elemental spirits. They never were, they never existed in a mortal form. But they can assume a mortal form if they need to by using nature to do so, the natural elements to do so. Well, that's the inhuman. Then you have the unhuman spirits, and those are the things that exist, and you can call it a spiritual dimension if you want to.
Yeah,
it's a dimension where it's a formless dimension, where, again, they can see our world, but they can't interact with our world unless we give them the energy and the ability to do so. I have seen once humans. I have seen, and just one of the degrees that I have in is in mortuary services, embalming, things like that.
Yeah.
And I've spent, I've spent many many, many nights working on my certificate and doing that with hanging out with dead bodies in morgues and in funeral homes. You know, and I have seen people who they'll come in dead, and I've seen a form of them rise from their body to walk away. Where the spirit doesn't depart at the time of death, but still is hanging on to the body, but chooses that time to leave there. And sometimes they'll turn and look at me, and most of the time they would just walk by me or walk through me and leave the room. I have seen the unhuman pretending to be a human spirit, which most people who do paranormal investigations, who collect evidence, I think about 75% of what people collect are unhuman spirits pretending to be once human spirits for the attention, because the more attention they get, the more power they get, the more they can manifest. So if you're there to see, you've heard the story of Great Aunt Tootie who killed people with an axe, and she still haunts the house with an axe. And the story is complete bullshit. But people are coming there expecting to find evidence of the ghost of Great Aunt Tootie, the axe murderer, and this unhuman spirit sees the opportunity, because remember, these things are opportunists. They see the opportunity to communicate with these paranormal investigators, because you're giving them attention, you're giving them energy, you're allowing them to manifest in our world. And they'll say, "Oh yes, I'm Great Aunt Tootie. I'm here to kill you. You better leave. I'm evil." And they enjoy that interaction. They're interacting with the physical world, with the physical plane, and they enjoy that interaction.
Can I ask you, mate, what do you think happens when you die? What is your thought process on that? What's your thoughts?
Well, according to my beliefs, the only way that when I die, the only way that I'll find peace, the only way that I'll be able to leave my body, is when somebody digs my grave, and when he digs my grave, my physical body will be placed within that grave, and my spiritual body will be placed within that grave, and he'll draw my spirit to the ground and guide me into the forest, and I'll be able to live with the other Lois and the deified ancestors and become one of them. It really depends on what you believe. But I believe that you just don't cease to exist, because everything exists again. It's so hokey sounding when you say it, but everything really is about energy, because we are machines, if you think about it.
That's right.
And machines, we are, and all batteries and machines are finite. Those batteries will run out. So where does that energy go when your battery runs out? What happens to that energy of your mind, the strongest, most powerful part of you?
Yes.
Where does that go? It just doesn't disappear. I mean, Albert Einstein, energy cannot be created, nor can it be destroyed.
Yes.
It can change form and exist as something else. And I think that's what happens. And depending on what your belief is what you become when you leave. You may come back and you may choose to ride the wheel and be reincarnated and come back as somebody or something else, and recycle that energy into another mortal form and another turn on the planet. Or you may explore other dimensions. It's completely up to you.
Yeah. I fancy your one, just exploring other dimensions. I'm going to be there with you, Mike. Hell no, I'm not getting reincarnated.
Reincarnation is fun, but that's a wheel that you have to purposely want to break, otherwise you'll just keep coming back and back and back.
Oh God, no, I don't think I want to come back here.
Well, that's what Buddhism always got me, because it seems rather tedious that after like the 99th incarnation, you should have learned your shit by now, so and moved on.
I used to be quite a religious person, right? I used to believe in Jesus and all that kind of stuff. But no, I believe there's an afterlife. I believe you go somewhere. That's my belief, right? And it's each to their own, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus was a desert elemental spirit that people worshipped.
Yeah.
There, I just said that out loud.
I know.
It's fine. Let the pissed offness begin.
Yes, and if you want to find the person and Mike the Naked Bigfoot is the man you want to look for.
His Twitter and his YouTube are in the description of this episode.
Yes. You can find him any time of any day.
If you want to see me piss, watch my Angels and Demons episode. That's the one that
Oh.
pisses everybody off.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that one. But it's. I think we're here just for a laugh, and you know that. I think this is what this is.
Oh,
One big
it's fun.
laugh.
It's so much
Aye.
fun. It
I
really
mean,
is.
I'm looking forward to going to Zach Bagan's museum and haunting him.
Oh, I love the shift change and vibe right there.
He has done him and his ilk have done more damage to
Oh no,
the study of supernatural and paranormal.
yeah.
The study of the supernatural and paranormal than any other human being out there. He picked up the I have to say this. He picked up the Ed and Lorraine Warren bullshit that they did, and he saw how they ran their show and how they ran their clown show, and he took his clown show and made it 10 times better. He went from the local clown show that was Ed and Lorraine Warren, and did the Barnum and Bailey of clown shows when it came to doing his shit. So.
Talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren, did you not tell me once you met her?
Yeah.
Lorraine Warren. How did that go down?
She didn't care for me at all.
I wonder.
But she was so polite. She didn't care for me whatsoever. I wonder why Lorraine Warren did. It was so unfortunate. She was doing one of her talks, one of her college talks in Louisiana, and I was there, and I went to it, and I had a chance to walk up to her and talk to her. And she had done her little slideshow and her conversations, and she took some questions from people that were already planted in the audience. The Warrens had a handler. He was their photographer. He ended up being their quote unquote manager and handler. I had a run in with that jackass because I went up to her, and I had just dealt with some mind knockers in Kentucky before I came back down to Louisiana. Yeah, the mind knockers were actually terrifying, but that's a story for another day.
Oh, you're teasing us.
Such a fucking
And I went up to her to talk to her, and she, at first when I walked up to her, she acted like she couldn't hear me. When I said, Ms. Warren, I wanted to meet you and talk to you. And she finally whirled around on me, and that woman was pissed when she looked at me. Because apparently my reputation preceded me.
Why is that?
At the time, I fancied myself a debunker because I loved going to traveling to tent revivals, and I love debunking spirit healers. And I saw her as a snake. Her and her. This was after her husband died. She was still selling the snake oil, and I was just trying to be polite and start a conversation. But apparently, she heard that I called her a snake oil salesman, and she didn't cuss me, but she didn't exactly tell me to stick around and have a conversation. And her handler, he did everything but smack me around.
Oh my God. Dakota, do you have a question for Mike? Come on, you must have something in there.
I honestly want to hear more about these mind knockers because it kind of sounds like some of my ex-girlfriends.
Can you tell me?
It's a type of elemental spirit.
Go and we've got plenty of time. Go and tell us. We can go a wee bit late for you.
Knockers they have many names. They're actually, I know it sounds so filthy, but miners, especially in West Virginia and Kentucky, can tell you about the knocking that happens when you go too deep in the mines, and you hear something literally knocking on the walls around you. And it's usually these critters are knocking to warn you that something's about to happen. And there's the standard knocker, which is helpful and friendly and will try to warn you. And then there's the domovoy and the polvoy. And the domovoy is a house spirit, which is a relative of a knocker, which is relatively friendly to the family that it's with. And it's a generational spirit too. It sticks with the same family for generations. and it's mostly helpful. But its cousin, which is the Polovoy, um, unlike your common mind spirit, a Polovoy actually will cause minds have minds cave in. They cause cave-ins. Or they'll trip miners, or they will appear to be another miner and lure them to their death in the mines. It took a whole. You can't get rid of them. You can only seal them away and cause them to cause less damage to the people and to the mine itself. And what we ended up doing was we appealed to the knockers of the mine. We entreated them to help us with the Polovoy that were there, and to help mitigate the evil that they were causing at the time. Because at the point we'd already had lost 4 miners up to that point. But then we had to seal off parts of the mine. When I say seal off, we're not talking about putting up walls or anything. We're talking about putting up spiritual walls that keep them out. Which was a collection of pine sap or pine tar or pitch, mixed with the blood of each miner. It only had to be a little blood from each miner to do it with, and then the blood of a holy man, and it had to be applied with a horsehair brush with a silver handle. So once we got all the ingredients together, we went around and we blessed all the tools. We used it to bless the tools with, and to seal the tools, and to seal the equipment, and to seal the mines with as well. And the activity, the dangerous activity, completely dropped off, but the knocking activity continued on, and probably continues to this day.
I've heard about them. The old miners used to talk about them called the Tommy Knockers. Is that right? Tommy, that's their name. Tommy Knockers.
Tommy Knocker is one of the names that can be used with them. That's more of a regionalism with describing them. That it gained more popularity, especially in literature and in media, that Tommy Knocker did, and became more of a nursery rhyme than it would be as a descriptive term for these spirits. So, but yeah, it's been used. It's been an interchangeable word to describe all of both the helpful and the unhelpful ones. So,
well, I'm going to ask you one more question. I was thinking about this today, and it's something I've never asked them. I thought, I'm going to ask Mike. Have you ever witnessed, Mike, 2 entities, like say 2 spirits or 2 elementals, pissed off with each other, fighting with each other?
No. I can't say that I have. I've seen them react to they mostly not react to each other, but they've worked together to react towards something that somebody has done to them, or to the land, or to something around them that they held precious.
Right. So they obviously know each other's there, but they just respect each other basically because they know each other's power. Yeah.
You have to remember with an elemental, you're dealing with the cycles of the earth, and you're dealing with the balance of the earth and the balance of energies. The only time they become aware of us is when something disturbs that balance. And they become aware of us, and they can either correct the balance, or they can work to correct the balance. Or work to reestablish the connections of energy that were flowing to them that have been severed or been disrupted by something that a man or a person has done. So,
right. I just can't wait till your book comes out. I want it out now.
Well, I hope everybody's had has everybody been good in the chat room tonight?
Everybody's sitting there. I mean, honestly, Mike, we'll need to get you back when your book is back out, But we'll talk to you after the live. Anyway, after this, we'll talk to you. But guys, thank you for tuning in to Mike the Naked Bigfoot. And guys, please go to his channel, which is below. Give him a subscribe. He does lives, and they're very informative. What's the next one coming up? When's your next live, Mike?
Monday. This upcoming Monday. I've been trying to do 2 a week. So this upcoming Monday, and then that Wednesday after that.
Yeah, I think guys, you just need to watch his live because absolutely amazing, honestly. And thank you everybody for coming. Thank you everybody on Facebook and all the 50 locations that this goes out to. And I'm no rhyming no more for Dakota, you know. But guys, please tune in tomorrow night because we have a special guest coming on. Is it what's his name, Dakota?
What? How do you pronounce his name, Chris? You're the one that booked him.
What do you mean? It's Birmingham. It's a Birmingham UFOologist. So we'll bring him on. You know. I can't remember his name off the top. Of my
I just
head,
remember
you know.
his name is Dave. That's all.
There you go. So guys, tune in tomorrow, and we'll be discussing UFOs in the United Kingdom. And thank you everybody for coming on. I'll talk to you in a minute.
Have a great night, everyone.
Oh,
See
yeah,
you later. Bye.
but before we go,
Oh,
you
we
forgot
should do
there's
something.
one little bit of news that we
that's
have
right.
on the
I never
company
forget
front.
that.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you want more information on Bald and Bonkers operations? We now have our own website.
Yes,
Yes.
a website. My goodness. We're going up in town, you know. We've got our own website, guys.
It's baldandbonkers.net for those of you on the podcast. Still being in development, but there's going to be plenty of surprises coming on that front.
Yeah.
So now I think we can end this.
Yes. So catch you all
Why do I
tomorrow
look like
night,
Donald
and
Trump?
Mike will talk to you after the live.
All right. That's
Bye,
it.
guys.
Bye bye.